Let me begin with a question that most people avoid asking out loud. Why do the people closest to us often hurt us the most? Not strangers, not enemies, but friends, colleagues, even family. If you've ever felt that the deepest wounds in your life came not from distance, but from proximity, you're not imagining it. You are observing a psychological pattern. And today, we're going to break that pattern down. We live surrounded by relationships, friends, co-workers, community, family. But within those relationships, there's a paradox. Closeness does not guarantee safety. In many cases, it amplifies psychological conflict. And to understand why, we need to identify 3 specific personality structures that quietly but powerfully damage relationships from within. Vulnerable narcissism, passive-aggressive personality, inferiority-driven aggressive type. These are not rare abnormalities. They are common psychological configurations often hidden beneath socially acceptable behavior. But among them, one type causes the deepest, most intentional damage. Let me be direct. The most destructive type is the inferiority-driven aggressor. Because unlike impulsive or defensive behavior, this type operates with a strategic orientation. They don't just react emotionally. They actively obstruct the growth of others. And interestingly, this pattern appears most intensely not among strangers, but within families and relatives. Why? Because family creates the perfect environment for comparison. Same background, similar starting points, shared expectations. So when one person rises, it is not perceived as isolated success. It becomes a mirror of another's perceived failure. And that is where distortion begins. Instead of celebration, you hear, "Must be luck." That's not a big deal these days. Anyone could do that. These are not casual remarks. They are identity-level attacks disguised as evaluation. An ancient text, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, offers a striking insight. All fear, all light, all forms arise from your own mind. Translated into modern psychology, the problem is not the other person. The problem is the illusion created by comparison within the mind. The inferiority-driven individual does not see reality as it is. They see a projection of their own insecurity. So when they attack, they are not truly attacking you. They are attacking the reflection of their own inadequacy. But here is the critical consequence. The moment they try to pull others down, their own perception narrows, their possibilities shrink, and their growth stops. So remember this, you may understand their pain, but you are not obligated to tolerate their behavior. Now, let's go deeper. 1. Vulnerable narcissism. When people hear narcissism, they imagine confidence, arrogance, dominance. But the more dangerous form is the opposite. Quiet, sensitive, insecure. This is vulnerable narcissism. These individuals are hypersensitive to evaluation, interpret others' success as personal failure, suppress outward aggression but harbor deep envy and resentment. They rarely attack directly. Instead, they engage in subtle criticism, social exclusion, indirect sabotage, reputation manipulation. Why? Because their sense of self is unstable. Their identity is not internally grounded. It is constructed through the eyes of others. So when external validation fluctuates, their entire sense of existence feels threatened. A simple piece of feedback becomes, "I am not enough." A neutral situation becomes, "I am being rejected." A drop in social media engagement becomes, "I am losing value." This is not logic. This is distorted identity processing. 2. Passive-aggressive personality. This type avoids conflict, but creates it indirectly. They will say, "I'm fine with it," but their behavior says, "I will make sure this fails." This is not contradiction. This is a strategy of resistance without accountability. Common behaviors include withholding critical information, spreading opposition behind the scenes, delaying decisions indefinitely. In organizational psychology, this is called passive resistance. They don't confront. They manipulate outcomes. Because direct opposition requires responsibility. Indirect obstruction avoids it. From a philosophical perspective, again reflected in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, distorting reality for others ultimately distorts your own consciousness first. The person who hides truth does not escape reality. They become increasingly disconnected from it. 3. Inferiority-driven aggression. Now we arrive at the most critical type. This framework aligns closely with the work of Alfred Adler, who argued that human behavior is fundamentally driven by inferiority and compensation. But when compensation fails, it becomes destruction. This type operates in 3 stages. Stage 1, identity threat. They don't think, I feel behind. They think, I am worthless. So acknowledging someone else's success feels like self-annihilation. Stage 2, cognitive distortion. They reconstruct reality. Success becomes luck. Effort becomes exaggeration. Achievement becomes meaningless. This is not ignorance. It is psychological defense through distortion. Stage 3, zero-sum thinking. Their worldview becomes, if you rise, I fall. So instead of growing, they block. Instead of collaborating, they sabotage. This is why they withhold opportunities, damage reputations, interrupt relationships, prevent connections, not impulsively, but systematically. And here is the ultimate irony. The moment they block someone else's path, they cut off their own, because perception defines possibility, and a narrowed perception eliminates growth. Ancient wisdom echoes this truth. From the Analects, when you see someone worthy, seek to become like them, not diminish them, not resist them. Learn from them. So what have we established? These 3 personality structures are not just personality issues. They are distortions of perception and consciousness. And distortion always produces behavior. Criticism, interference, neglect, rumors, opportunity blocking. But now we must ask the deeper question. Why does this pattern repeat not just in individuals, but across families, organizations, and entire societies? Why do groups suppress individuals who rise? Why do even unrelated observers become aggressive? Why does success trigger resistance at a collective level? Because this is not just psychology. It is structure, a structural pattern of human social systems. And this is where we go next, in the next lecture. Why do even uninvolved third parties become more cruel? Why do groups instinctively suppress rising individuals? What is the hidden architecture behind collective hostility? Let me leave you with one final warning. You don't need to fear those who try to pull you down, but you must be cautious of becoming someone who doesn't understand this structure. Because if you don't understand it, you may unconsciously repeat it. As the Tibetan Book of the Dead reminds us, only the awakened can escape the illusion. If this perspective challenged the way you see relationships, consider subscribing, liking, and sharing, so more people can recognize the patterns they're living inside. In the next lecture, we move from the individual mind to the structure of society itself.